What's up, Packer fans? I'm Untitled Chapter, host of Monologue Packers podcast. Thank you for being here, and thank you for checking out this video. There are only 4 weeks left in the NFL season, and we face off against the 3-9 Washington Redskins at noon on Sunday. I think that's what I was trying to say. So I'm here to break down some of my thoughts on this matchup. I don't think it's going to be much of a competition or a back and forth type of a game, but I'm here to talk about a number of different things heading into the final stretch of the season, where we need to position ourselves, things that we can improve on, and yes, looking forward and giving you my final thoughts on the matchup. So without further ado, it is time to pour ourselves another Packers podcast. So as always, before we get started, and because I have not done one of these videos in a little while, if you have not subscribed to this channel, or it's your first time kind of stumbling across this content and you find yourself to be a Packers fan and would love to have more Packers information in your life, go ahead and click that subscribe button. I will be giving away the canvas behind me once I hit 1,000 subscribers, and it has been pretty steady right around that 860 here for the last week or two. Like I said, I didn't post the video last week. I've been struggling personally with a cold, a sinus infection, the flu. I don't know what I got, but for about a week and a half now, ever since the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, I have been struggling with an earache, a toothache, a neck ache, my body. My body doesn't like me very much right now. And I wasn't sure I was going to do a video this week, so I'm going to try and keep it short, to the point, not so much of a script, kind of do a little bit of talking like I do on Monday nights when I am live. So go ahead, click that subscribe button, hit that like button, tune in on Monday nights when we go live, we talk, we answer questions, and we go into a little bit more further content. But one of the things that I want to talk about was notable players of the week, and just to give you an idea of how well prepared I am right now, I record these on my phone, and I completely spaced on the fact that my phone is what I use to record the content. So let me figure out exactly what I want to talk about for my notable headlines. So as I said in recapping last week's game against the New York Giants, Green Bay did go on to win 31-13. Rodgers had he went 21 for 33, had a little over 240 yards, 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and probably the biggest highlight player for that game for me would have to be Allen Lazard, and that's why he made his way to the title screen for this particular video. He had only three receptions, but he had 103 yards. He had a touchdown. He was that deep threat receiving option on a 40-yard touchdown that Rodgers was able to connect on last week, which is something that's desperately been missing for our Packers offense throughout this entire season. So maybe that gives a little bit of spark and hope for what we can see outside of Adams, which, speaking of, Adams had 6 receptions for 64 yards, 2 touchdowns. He finally put himself a game and got into the end zone multiple times in receiving land. Mercedes Lewis had a touchdown, and then probably the great saving grace of what our defense is able to do, and something that we haven't seen in a while, is multiple turnovers. Now, this shouldn't come as much of a surprise when you have a quarterback like Daniel Jones, and you have a struggling offense and a struggling team in general, like the New York Giants. There should be turnovers created. This is something that I will look forward to on Sunday's game against the Washington Redskins, but Tramon Williams had just an absolute beautiful snag of an interception. Darnell Savage came in with an interception, and then yes, Kevin King somehow finds a way to give up tons of yards, but then goes out there and finds a way to get an interception himself. I don't really know. I mean, if it's becoming, I'm beating a dead horse on my thoughts of Kevin King. Hopefully. I'm not giving up on him, because the season is far from over. We have some meaningful football ahead of us. So hopefully Kevin King can continue to increase his turnovers. He's had 4 interceptions so far this season, but he's been giving up too many yards, and he seems to be the guy that the opponents are going at, as far as, do you have Jair Alexander that you want to throw the ball at, or do you want to go at Kevin King? And it seems to be consistently that Kevin King is that is that option for opposing teams that we face. But I just have a horrible taste in my mouth since that San Francisco 49ers game, and what came against the Giants. Even though it was a big win in terms of score, being 31-13, I just can't shake the type of performance that we had coming out of our bye week against the San Francisco 49ers. Yes, we need to move on. And yes, I did expect Green Bay to lose that game. However, I did not expect them to lose that game in such a fashion. I thought it would be a lot closer matchup. I thought that they would be competitive, but there was not a whole lot to be, on the bright side taken away from that game. So that's where we look at our matchup against the Giants last week. We look at the Redskins on Sunday, and then we look at the Chicago Bears, who managed to beat the Dallas Cowboys on Thursday night, and are two kind of still just lingering around. They're showing that they have some life in them as far as being a competitive football team. We look at these three matchups, or I look at these three matchups, as the Packers need to find ways to improve week in and week out and increase their overall team before we face off against the Minnesota Vikings on December 23rd, which is only 2 more weeks away. So Packers are still positioning themselves for a great playoff position. They are currently the 3rd seed, sitting behind the New Orleans Saints and the Seattle Seahawks, but I do anticipate all of that to shift around, all of that to move. I still think that the Packers can come away with a number 2 seed and a first-round bye, but even if they don't, I can't say that would be the worst thing. I'm not, after coming out of that bye week and seeing the flat performance against the 49ers, maybe it would not be the worst thing, or maybe it would be in the best interest for the Green Bay Packers to just kind of keep on playing if they have momentum, to go out there, build that momentum, and kind of make a run as they make their way to the Super Bowl. But let's move on to Sunday's matchup. Let's talk about the Redskins game. Let's try to take away some nuggets and some highlights and some things that we can talk about as we approach this game. So Sunday will mark the 38th meeting between these two teams, with Green Bay leading the series 20 wins to 16 losses and 1 tie. However, even though Green Bay leads the overall series, Washington has kind of had their number the last couple meetings. So in 2018 and 2016, both games were won by Washington in Washington, and this will be the first time the Packers will be able to face the Washington Redskins at home since 2013. Outside of just Washington coming to town, this will be Green Bay's first home game since November 10th, so we're over a month away, or it's been about a month since the Packers have been able to host a home game. And outside of the Redskins, they'll have one more game next week against the Bears that they can kind of get their home crowd to back them up and kind of put things together and get things going. Green Bay has gone 2-1 so far against the absolutely dreadful NFC East. If you're all over social media, or if you've even just heard of the internet, there are just a slew of memes, and nobody is loving on that NFC East right now. And seriously, to put how bad the NFC East actually is, the 3-9 Washington Redskins technically still aren't eliminated from winning the division. That's right. If they won the last 4 games and they beat Dallas, and Dallas manages to lose one more game against the Redskins, just not even against the Redskins. If they lost one more game, Washington can win the division. At 7-9, they could win the NFC East. And I'm reaching for headlines here. I know I'm making a point out of it. I do think the Eagles will end up taking that awful conference and winning that conference. But to be 3-9 with 4 games remaining and still have some sort of shot or even hope or just a glimmering light that you might find yourself winning the division and making a playoff seed is something that most teams will not be able to say year in and year out by any stretch of the imagination. So it has been a tale of opposite seasons for these two teams, and you don't have to look any further than their records. The Packers are sitting at 9-3. The Redskins again are sitting at 3-9. But with the Packers, they were just talking about their season and how they got to this point. Week 14, 12 games into the season, they had a new head coach, new offensive system, new additions via free agency to that defense. There were not a lot of expectations outside of Packers country for what this team could do, but Green Bay has definitely exceeded any of those expectations and are positioned to win their 13th NFC North Division championship since 1995. And with a win on Sunday, you look at Matt LaFleur in his rookie head coach season, he would have the most wins at 10 for a rookie head coach in franchise history. So that'd be something I'd like to see LaFleur accomplish. And I don't think that will be his last victory or his last win in that column. We'll get to that, or maybe I'll touch upon that a little bit later in this video. But as far as Washington's season, on the other hand, it has been a little bit of a soap opera of what has occurred out there in the old DC area. After an 0-5 start, Washington parted ways with their head coach Jay Gruden. This isn't new news to anybody out there. He spent his last 5 years with the Redskins. He just seemed like he didn't have the buy-in of his players anymore. And then he had some crazy social media video where he was out smoking with some college chicks and whatnot. It just didn't seem like what you'd wanted to have out of your NFL coach, and especially when you're 0-5. Maybe if you're 5-0, you can get away with it, but not so much when you're 0-5. So offensive lines coach Bill Callahan was named the interim head coach ever since. And before the coaching change, before I go into that a little bit, before that coaching change, back when Jay Gruden was still the head coach, there was a lot of unrest with Adrian Peterson and how he was utilized within their game plan. He obviously felt like he should be getting the ball more. He felt like he could still ball more. But since the change, he has had 3 100-yard rushing games, and I am including his 99-yard performance last week against Carolina. And Washington, since the change at head coach, has played some hard-fought battles. I mean, yes, they've only have 3 wins, but you look at some of these matchups. They lost 0-9 against the San Francisco 49ers. They lost 9-19 against the Minnesota Vikings, and they lost 9-24, which is a little bit more of a blowout performance against Buffalo. But all 3 of these teams are playoff teams, and there wasn't really a 31-0, 34-0 type of scenario at all throughout those. So the score only tells half the story. I know that San Francisco game was a rainy thing and a whole bunch of crap that factored into that score in general. But they've won their last 2 games against Detroit and Carolina. They are coming off of a 2-game win streak, and they're going to head into Green Bay with a little bit more of a chip on their shoulder and a little bit more belief that they can compete with some of these better teams in the NFL. At the end of the day, though, this is a Green Bay team at home with aspirations of making a deep playoff run, and I do think that they should have no problem getting a W on Sunday. So without really diving into unnecessary topics as far as the game preview, let's just hit our final thoughts real quick. We'll talk about our game predictions, and then we'll get ourselves out of this video and on to the next one. So keys to victory. So my keys to victory are a little bit different than what they have been in the past, and there is one key to victory, but other than that, there's really just areas of improvement that I want to see in this game that gives me hope that the Packers can maybe start to turn the corner as far as being one of these top teams in the NFL. Because you look at teams like San Francisco, Baltimore, Seattle, even to an extent, New Orleans to an extent. These are teams that I think are kind of risen to the top of the NFL and are playing on a different level than what we've seen from Green Bay so far. But when we talk about our key to victory, there is one and only one truly important key to victory that will get Green Bay a W on Sunday, and that is stopping the run. So Adrian Peterson, more times than not, has been successful against the Green Bay Packers in his career. And last year, when they faced off in Week 3, Adrian Peterson went over 100 yards rushing. He absolutely torched the Green Bay Packers. Yes, this is a different personnel as far as the team, but it is a Mike Pettin defense that we still had last year. And although he was on the injury report Thursday with a toe injury, he was a full participant in practice Friday. It does seem like he will be expected to start, and he will be a factor for the Packers to go up and kind of put in his place. Outside of Peterson, they have Darius Geis, could find himself another double-digit type of carries, or double-digit carries throughout the day. He is coming off of a 129-yard game last week with 2 touchdowns, and he averaged 12.9 carries. So you look at Peterson and Darius Geis, both these guys rushed for over 200 yards, and they absolutely kind of just beat up on the Carolina Panthers, or surprised the Carolina Panthers with their performance. I think the Packers have had a number of these challenges throughout the season. They did fairly decent against Saquon Barkley last week. They've held up against Ezekiel Elliott. They faced some really good running backs outside of really probably that San Francisco 49ers game or the Philadelphia Eagles game. I think the Packers have a better run stop ability than what their actual stats and whatnot give them credit for. Dalvin Cook is just around the corner when we face it off against the Vikings, and Green Bay will have to put the game essentially in Dwayne Haskins' hands. He is a rookie quarterback. He's only been a starter for a handful of weeks. His number one receiver is still healthy in Terry McLaurin. However, wide receivers Paul Richardson Jr. and Terry Quinn both have been ruled out, so he will be shorthanded on his receivers. And get out there. Just get out there, stop the run, put it in his hands. Green Bay should come away with a victory. I don't know. I struggle with these types of videos. I think once we hit that Giants game last week, really I think I looked at every single matchup this season, and I had a lot to say, a lot of benefits for both teams on why it could be a competitive matchup. I didn't think it would be a competitive matchup against the New York Giants. They hung in there a little bit longer than I would have liked them to. I don't think it's going to be all that competitive against Washington being at home. I think the trap game and all that stuff should be behind us. So again, stop the run. Green Bay should win the game. But the two remaining things that I want to see out of Green Bay in tomorrow's game or Sunday's game or today's game, whenever you're watching this video, it's really it's just the defense needs to create chaos and continue to force turnovers. They did a good job of forcing turnovers last week against the New York Giants, and I think with Dwayne Haskins in the game, they should be able to create some more interceptions throughout that matchup. But when I talk about chaos, I want to see this defense fly around and be aggressive and get at the quarterback and shut down the run in the backfield. I don't want to see Washington get any sort of momentum throughout that game, nor should they get any sort of momentum when the Green Bay Packers are the better team in this matchup and have a lot more ahead of them than what the Washington Redskins have. It's been weeks since we have seen this dominant, maybe potentially what we considered a top 5 defense very early on in the season. We haven't seen a resemblance of that, and I think that is a cautionary point as we head into the playoffs, that this defense needs to start firing on all cylinders. So I'll be watching for a dominant, chaotic performance out of that defense on Sunday. And the other one needs to just go back to the offense and just they need to find some rhythm again. This is something that we've seen in spurts throughout the season. With Adams out, we've found some rhythm with some of our backup receivers. But since Adams has come back in, I think he had a great performance last week. I think they were able to integrate him into that offense well and still get the ball moving around. But on the flip side of that, our run game became kind of obsolete. So I want to see a solid running performance. I don't care who the running performance comes from. I'm fine with it if it's Jamal Williams. I'm fine if it's Aaron Jones. But we need to get some sort of ground and run production out of that team. Outside of that, yes, Adams will get his receptions. Lazard should continue to step up and be that number 2 wide receiver. But then who is going to be our third person on the back end? Is it going to be Allison? Is it going to be Geronimo? Could it be Kumro? Sure as hell isn't going to be Jimmy Graham, because he seems to be about as useless can get. He's just gotten old. I think it's come to the back end of his career, and I just can't defend him anymore. But this offense needs to find rhythm, find themselves in third down and manageable, don't have any 3 and outs, continue to move the football. I don't want to see J.K. Scott on the field at all, quite frankly. I want to see them be able to get themselves into field goal position at least and put together a full offensive performance and put together, again, a full defensive performance. So those are kind of my 3 keys, my 3 things I will be watching, for a lack of a better term. Let's talk about the game prediction, and let's dive right into it. So without a doubt, you know what my thoughts are on the game. Green Bay should come away with a fairly easy victory. So what I want to see versus what I think will happen, what I want to see is, I don't want to see the Redskins find themselves in the end zone. I think that we need to flip that switch at some point, and if it's not going to come against Washington, it needs to come against Chicago. But I'm like, the Bears are looking a little bit more rejuvenated each and every week with a performance like they had against the Dallas Cowboys on Thursday, and who knows what we have out of Dallas. Offense needs to find a rhythm. I think that they will put up 28 points in total offense, and I do think that the Redskins will be held to 9 points. I think that the Packers will continue to give up yards throughout the game. I think they'll find opportunities to get some field goals throughout the game, but the Packers win 28 to 9. Green Bay will move to 10-3 on the season, and with a loss, the Redskins will officially be eliminated from any sort of playoff contention. And yes, everything I said before then will be thrown out the window like dust in the wind. So with that, guys, I will wrap up this video. Thank you for hanging out with me and checking this out. Again, I'm not feeling very good. I am under the weather. I feel a little bit scatterbrained. I feel like I'm using my hands a lot more than I typically use my hands. But I will be live on Monday night at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. We will talk about that Washington Redskins game, and we might watch Monday Night Football again and just kind of hang out. The last one I did on Monday night, it was an hour and like 40-minute video great Monday night battle against the Minnesota Vikings and the Seattle Seahawks. I do want to do a little bit of a playoff machine prediction and give you some of my thoughts as we kind of file it down to the last 3 games of the season, which are all divisional games, mind you, and really give you my opinion of how I see this shaking out. But there's a lot of good football to be played this week. I'm rooting for the San Francisco 49ers to come away with a victory over the Saints. Without further ado, I will until next time. I always stumble at the end of these videos, so I'm gonna sign off. Scatterbrain Jane signing off. Go Pack Go. Until next time, I will see you on the internet. Thanks for watching.